Om Danirgrahitva Upanishadam Mahastram Sharam Upasanashita Sanjayita Ayamya Tad Bhavakatena Chitasa Laksham Tadevaksharam Somya Vidhi. Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. Taking as weapon that mighty bow furnished by the Upanishads and other non-dual scriptures of India, fasten to them the arrow of mind, made sharpened by thoughts on reality alone. Then, pulling full strength, O student, release and penetrate the mark, that imperishable Brahman. Om peace, peace, peace. Om apyayantu mamangani vakpranas chakshuhu shrotamatra balamindriyani chasarvani. Sarvam Brahma Upanishadum Mahabrahma Nirakuryam Mama Brahma. Nirakaroda Nirakaranamastva Nirakaranam Meastu. Taratmani Nirate Ya Upanushatsu Dharmaste. Mai Shantu Te Mai Shantu. Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. May the body experience perfect health. May our life force flow unimpeded. May our minds expand in their capacity to know Brahman. For the Upanishads state that all existence is Brahman. Therefore may we never deny Brahman, and may Brahman never deny us. May there be no rejection of Brahman ever by us, we who are dedicated to the realization of the Atman within. May all the divine qualities cited in the Upanishads also dwell within us. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Sahana, Om Sahana Vavatu, Sahanau Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karvavahai, Tejasvi Navaditamastu Ma Vidveshovahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman, that reality, protect us. May Brahman sustain us. May Brahman illumine our thinking process. May we not find fault with each other, with the world, or with the teachings. And may what we study be a source of inspiration to us eternally. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om. Namaskaram. Salutations to everyone who has arrived here at the SRV San Francisco Ashram Healing Center to partake of the wisdom of Vedanta, which includes under its scope, of course, great systems of Mother India, like yoga, the eight-limbed, and Tantra, and Samkhya, and even such non-orthodox religions as Buddhism and Jainism, all originating there in Mother India, and all with that particular unique perspective that the only reality is Brahman and all else is unreal. So therefore when you remove all the coverings and appearances off of the appearance of things, then you find this Brahman underlying always and ever, without any diminution, without any change, without any transformation going on, without any birth and death, without any life, just eternal life, as Jesus said. And so all of these overlays or false superimpositions, vivarta in Sanskrit, once they're removed, then the human being is back at its source again, and finds out, to its shock and surprise, that it never left its source. It was just dreaming itself away, as Swami Vivekananda used to say. And that dreaming away is called sankalpa, and that's one of the things we will look at today, the ability of the human mind on individual, collective, and cosmic, 3 levels, to project the universe of name and form in time and space based in causality. Those 5 things, name, form, time, space, and causality, nama, rupa, desha, kala, nimitta, they're called in Sanskrit, are what makes up Maya. Maya is that thing that stultifies you. It deludes the human mind unless it's seen and withdrawn from. Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, whose birthday is this coming Tuesday, has said that never study Maya up close, always look at it from a distance. And if you look about the world, you'll see that all the secular sciences and all the so-called wisdom that we are gathering here is based in relativity, is not taking into account reality. So there's a sort of unfairness going on in science, and probably a shortcoming going on in religion nowadays, because we need to account for reality and seek thee first. I think it was said very well by Lord Jesus, is that you must put this reality first and foremost amongst everything, and then let the world trail along behind if it will. If it won't, then let it go. Maybe let it go anyway, as Jesus did, and many of the other great sannyasins of the world. When they found out that it was changing, ephemeral, transitory, that you couldn't build your house upon it because it was always shifting sand and so forth and so on, you've had to find that bedrock. As Sri Ramakrishna was to say later in the 1800s, you must put the 1 before the zeros. All these zeros add up to nothing. But if you put a 1 before all these zeros, all of a sudden you've got this huge amount. So it's really that simple of a move on the part of the spiritual aspirant to decide to put the Lord, Mother of the Universe, first, and to let everything else fall behind. And it's the strange condition and situation of suffering that inhabits all the other souls of the world, the major percentage probably, who put the world first and then say, oh, maybe I'll get around to God later, or maybe God doesn't exist at all, why should I even bother, and so forth. Or maybe, as Sri Ramakrishna once said humorously, most people don't even think about God by accident. So that's getting to be a very precarious situation if you were to inquire into the seers of Mother India and these systems that we're studying. We finished the Atharva Upanishad after some 2 or 3 years of study. Maybe I'm underestimating, maybe it went longer. I always surprise myself at how long we take to unwrap these verses and the Dharma teachings that come out of them. Those few of us who adhere over the years and stay with it begin to extract a divine essence or a nectar out of it. And that's the name of the Upanishad that we're approaching today in San Francisco for the first week, first class. And tomorrow also we'll be taking it up. It's called the Amritabindu Upanishad. Bindu is an interesting word. And it really, in this case, you could say a drop. But it's just like, you see the Hindu women will put a bindi here on their forehead, or sometimes you'll see the Shaktas or the Shaivites will have a mark. So it's just a mark or an indication, or if you will, a drop. And Amritabindu Upanishad that we're taking up today then means a drop of nectar. Amrit means nectar. So it's just a drop of these Upanishadic teachings that will make a god, a man into a god, and a woman into a goddess, as Sri Ramakrishna was wont to say. Even hearing them for the first time causes a huge transformation on the human mind, although some people are not quite ready to recognize it or follow it. And it will, like a drop of acid, seep in and burn through everything eventually. It's just a matter of time. So there's this auspicious timing for the administration of such a drop by the guru to the disciple, or by the Lord to the aspiring human being. And then there's a time also when it will burn through and reach that point where, as Sri Ramakrishna used to say, a hole was made in the curtain, and I could all of a sudden see. So that's the benefit of drawing back from Maya instead of studying it. You get absorbed in it and you thicken that curtain, and it becomes real to you. Everything becomes real, and the Lord becomes obscured. You see, just by the very nature of studying form, the formless reality gets obscured. It's just a simple matter of green scum covering a pond, and you can't see a reflection. There's nothing to do with sin or evil or devils or gods. It just has to do with the human mind and its delusion, that it's allowing this to happen to itself. And so the remedy, quick and swift, is just to brush that green scum away, or cause a hole to be bored in that curtain of Maya, and then a drop of nectar is responsible for that. And so the name of the Upanishad is well named. I wanted to make the announcement that we went to India recently. We were just there in Mother India, and we brought back the minor Upanishads that have been put together by one of the presidents of the Ramakrishna order in the past, Swamini Svatmavidyananda. Did a great service by taking some of the minor Upanishads and putting them in here. And we say by minor Upanishads is kind of an affectionate term, I think, because the major Upanishads are those that Shankara commented on. 9, maybe 10 if you include the Svetasvatara that we just finished in San Francisco, my last visit. And then the other 99 or 98, depending on how you count it, are called minor Upanishads because Shankara, in his 32-year-old lifetime, this amazing soul, didn't get around to have the time to comment on the other 98 or 99. So there, in my own study of the minor Upanishads, looking through all 99 of them, let's say, I found out that actually there were 7 that were dedicated to the goddess, and that's kind of an unknown fact. And I have been teaching those at our retreats every year, mainly up in Seattle, and I'll be teaching one this coming Seattle weekend after next on the Advaita Vedanta, and then later in the year on the Upanishad, Mother Upanishad. So I'm bringing that up because there are also 4 other Bindu Upanishads in that collection. This is just one of 5 Upanishads with the name Bindu in it. Brahma Bindu and so forth are in there. So the Amritabindu has that distinction among them of dealing right away with probably this main problem of the human mind according to Vedanta. If you could solve this one problem, you would probably all of a sudden find yourself very close to your true nature again, and on very friendly terms. Have friends in high places again. Make a connection between the jiva, the embodied being, and Shiva, the internal reality. Shiva bringing him up because last night was Shivaratri, that's holy night of Shiva, and we chanted to Lord Shiva and had a little satsang. And we'll do our puja for Shiva in Portland next week, if all of you come, when we study the Adhyatma Upanishad, which is another one of those minor Upanishads. It's a hidden jewel. So you may pick these up from us, you order them from us or from any Ramakrishna Vedanta center. Come to San Francisco or Portland and pick one up. I think it's really expensive, It's like the most precious wisdom in the world, but it's going to cost you $2 to get it, so you better bring your wallets and checkbooks. So also,
no, I was just saying maybe people want to follow along in class.
Oh yeah, if anyone doesn't have the text with you today in class, if you want to take one of these and follow along, then that's a good way of selling it to you too. I'm like a man selling water next to a river here, as the Sufis say. See, giving you the highest truth for free. And when it's rolling through you as a stream of consciousness. So with the Upanishad in hand then, and the Amritabindu having been announced, then we can move into the actual slokas. I've, of course, accompanied with some charts that I've put together over the years, so that we have both an audible and a visual. I think it's important for particularly the Westerners in this day and time. They're used to looking at visuals, like screens and so forth. But you probably won't find people walking along reading this in the street and walking off a cliff, you see, like they do with cell phones. So what you've got here is something that actually it causes you to stop walking. You're going to sit, like I am right now, and want to drink this in, like to get that nectar, that drop of nectar that's in it. So it'll want to make you stationary, the Upanishads, not moving about. And when you do move about, you won't feel like you're moving about anymore. You feel like you're always in one place, or that God, Brahman, Allah, Almighty Father, Buddha nature, whatever you want to call it, is all pervasive in everything and everywhere, so you don't have to move to find it anymore. And of course, as Jesus said again, you'll find it inside of yourself. There ain't no spirit up there in the sky. Sorry to disagree with that bluegrass song. There's no spirit in the sky. The spirit's in you and I. So you always have to look for it within inside of yourself. And once you have that, then you have the pole star for your life. And everything else gets arranged around that. You see, like we bring that forward, first and foremost, and then you'll have everything in order. Everything else will be added onto you. This is how the sloka, we call it in India, ends. So Amritabindu Upanishad, one of 5 great Upanishads, and also a drop of nectar that everyone should probably put on their tongue. I might say, metaphorically, you want to get a eyedropper first, so you can extract it from that pool or that ocean of essence. Sara, Sharda, our like Holy Mother name means pool of essence. Is one way of interpreting it. She's Sharda Devi. Or the goddess Saraswati is also called Sharda. So she's the goddess of the word, goddess of wisdom, the Vak Devi. She's got an ocean of this. It's called the word, or Om. So if you get an eyedropper and take a drop out of that ocean and drop that on your tongue, and you've got one of these great Upanishads in you, and it's circulating in your system, and it's going to have a revolutionary effect upon you. You just wait and see. Of course, there is some qualification and some preparation that an aspiring student should undergo. That's why I chanted, take as weapon this mighty bow furnished by the Upanishads, and fasten to it the arrow of mind, made sharp by thoughts of reality alone. So some people could grab an arrow and stick it in the bow and release it, but the arrow's blunt, and then when it hits the target, it just falls. It doesn't penetrate. And that's, of course, a person who is failing to reach the ultimate goal. So I'm speaking metaphorically and with hypothetical situations, but it's not all that hypothetical when we find out that amongst all the 7-8 billion, how many are there on Earth now, there's very few who have this kind of special wisdom as their own possession, and are therefore living in peace of mind. It's easy to recognize them if you get close. If you're far away, then maybe it's not. So with the curtain of Maya, stay far away and look at it. But with the wise, get close to them. So you want to feel the heat coming off that fire. And actually the second sloka says, and so say the wise. You see. So they're pointing out to you that cross-section of beings, a very slender percentage in that nowadays, more back in the times when the Amritabindu Upanishad and others were being finally written down, because these came out of the illumined mind. They didn't come out of some intellectual's mind and pen, like a novel would, or some sort of commentary on secular subjects. These were meditated upon, remembered as being eternal, and pulled forth from the eternal scriptures. That pool of wisdom I'm talking about was pulled forth from them, gelled in their mind, and then they put it into writing. And this whole thing took some thousands of years. They wouldn't write it down at first. They just transmit it straight to their children, which was the secret of Mother India's success in spirituality, is that there was no intermediary like a church or a priest or anything. The home was the church, and the father and mother were the priests. And that's what we have to return to. It's probably the hardest feat that we'll accomplish in America if we can do that. Because a great soul like Swami Vivekananda came here in 1893, and it's been over 100 years since he's come, and we haven't made that much headway towards bringing these great principles back into our country. We want to take a country and a people that's basically turning towards adharma, that is unrighteousness, like wars and coveting goods, and I don't need to explain this to you. You see the news, I'm sure, and the state of politics and everything that's going on. But to bring that back to focus, then you're going to need the Dharma, these teachings that are eternal, that worked in a culture that was ancient. And pardon me, but it didn't work in Greece, and it didn't work in Rome. And that's what we're following. You go to Washington, D.C. and look at the White House. It's pillars. It's right out of Rome. You look at the Lincoln Memorial, you'll see it's all Roman and Grecian influence. But and that's where we borrowed our idea of a utopian society. But India thinks there's no such thing as a utopian society in a perfect world. They say that saying a perfect world is like saying hot ice. It just doesn't exist. And this goes right in line with Buddha's first noble truth. There is suffering. That's the first thing you have to admit. If you say, no, there's only pleasure, you see, or if you say, there's no death for me until death is upon you, then you're going against the Dharmic teachings of Buddha, father of yoga, father of Vedanta, the wise. The wise in spiritual matters. I hope we understand what I mean by spiritual. It's not some seance or some crystal waving or some tarot cards or something that people are engaging in. When we say spirituality in Vedanta, we mean knowledge of the self and its identity with Brahman. That is, this apparently individualized self called the mind-ego complex is really one with Brahman. But you're going to have to strip away some of these superimposed layers to find that out. And those who do are called the wise, or the rishis, or the seers, or the saints. We could say the saviors too, but India wasn't really into saviors. It's into exemplars. If you have to rely upon a savior, then you're risking getting lost. You see, Jesus did not found Christianity. There was no Christianity when he lived, and he was not a savior. He was there to say, "Oh, you've made a mistake. Well, go and sin no more. Be free. Just rectify it and get back to your true nature again." So these are things we have to look at very closely, especially today. And today there's not a lot of people looking at religion because religion has let them down. It's become fundamentalist and too dualistic. It's not doing its job even to teach morals and ethics. Because moral and ethics that aren't based upon higher teachings are going to fall, like Greece and Rome did. Greece and Rome had plenty of good things in their societies, but they didn't last. Probably beings like Pythagoras and Socrates and so forth began to get an inkling of this higher truth once they started writing their philosophy down and they got deeper. Then you can, Heraclitus and some of these writers, all of a sudden were thinking, oh, well, maybe there's a transcendent reality in here somewhere that has nothing to do with the world, that's beyond the world, it's transcendent. Well, maybe we should start looking at that. So the idea there is that there wasn't quite enough time to develop these philosophies in an opulent society. Pleasure was running ruin with them, and opulence was opulent society, or the Bhoga Marg, we call it in India, the path of pleasure, was ruining the path of knowledge. It's always eating away at it, you see, because the path of knowledge, Jnanam, we call it higher knowledge, is for those who renounce. Those who renounce the world, they get this higher knowledge. They get a drop of nectar on their tongue by the Divine Mother of the Universe. Stick out your tongue, just like the doctor. See, You go to this Divine Mother and she stick out your tongue, here's Amrit for you, and you get a drop and you're free. And she'll know the truth and the truth shall set you free. So you come to the truth and that's it for you. No more birth in the womb of ignorance, in the womb of matter for you. Only emanation from your Divine Mother. Then you're hers, she's yours. You're the Lord's, the Lord is yours. And that's oneness, see. Pretty soon there's not even any difference between the being walking around on two legs and the formless reality called God. There's no difference. There never was. All the differences were superimposed. And they weren't helped much by dualistic and fundamentalist religion and money-making philosophy and society and upbringing that wasn't dharmically correct. See, none of that helped it. It hindered it. So this ennobling truth is being brought to you by Vedanta. See, and it's Buddhism is just another form of Vedanta, and Vedanta another form of Buddhism, if you want to say. These two are one and the same, coming out of one and the same Mother Wisdom. Bharat, the eternal land of wisdom. That's what they used to call India before it was named India, or Hindus. Indus River, India. So all of these thoughts come rushing in on me. You see, when you wanted to share the Dharma with people, then you find out that the Divine Mother herself sits on your tongue and says, okay, let's give you a try. She drive you like a car, you see. And you don't really have any say in it. She just uses your vocal cords and your mouth and your brain to put teachings through it, and you do the best you can to field them. So right now I'm having a wash of thoughts come at me, and I'm having to select the ones I think might work in today's society, in today's class, and express it in the best way I can in an inspiring and ennobling way. The Upanishads are both poetic and ennobling. That's their appeal. Some of the Upanishads are even stories about a young boy whose father tells him, I give you to death. It's like saying the old way of saying go to hell, you see. I give you to death, son. And so Yama always obeyed his father. Nachiketas always obeyed his father, so he went looking for Yama, the Lord of Death. Oh, you've given me to death? He didn't even question it, you see. Oh, well, I guess I'll go look and find out death since I belong to him. So he went and found death, and Mrs. Death met him at the door. See, every good god has a wife, see, a consort of Shakti. And death isn't home today, see, she said. So basically, you have to come back. And no, I don't want to come back. I want to see death. Well, then come in. You'll be a guest, and I'll feed you and so forth. Because even death has to eat, evidently. So in comes Yama after and apologizes to Nachiketas for not being home. And Nachiketas goes on asking him, what's behind you? What's beyond you, death? And death won't tell him. So Yama makes Nachiketas prove himself. And so I'm getting into a different Upanishad now, but basically this is the backdrop of some of the Upanishads, just great stories that are intriguing, using the gods and goddesses as if they were no different than us. And they aren't. They're inside of you, you see. The gods and goddesses are all inside of you. They're not in some heaven up in the sky. There's no spirit in the sky. You have to go inside to make darshan, to have darshan, or to have communion with these beings. So that's going to require you to sit quiet for a while, because these beings are in a quiet place. And God is in a silent place, completely silent, formless. And so you have to make yourself silent and formless in order to find that reality, like Buddha did sitting 40-some days under the bo tree, like Christ did in the wilderness, you see. Like Muhammad did on the mountain. They all went somewhere away from the madding crowd and just made themselves quiet so they could receive a drop of nectar. And that drop of nectar would remind them of their true nature. And they could go back to society and families and so forth and remind them, and get crucified and killed by society and so forth. Part of the sacrifice, you see. There's going to be resistance against the light here in this world all the time. And just read the Beatitudes, for instance, a beautiful teachings in Christianity about how you're going to be ostracized and so forth, and people are going to rail against you, and how you need to be strong and firm and give out this message, and so in order to do that effectively, you're going to have to be the possessor of that message. You're going to have to be the knower of truth. You can't feign this. You can't fake it. You can't pretend it, because that will be worse. You see, that's hypocriticalness, and then you'll start up a religion in some false premise and put your name on it. So this has to be something that's sincere in you, and for the good of society, for the good of people, and basically for those who want to listen. You don't strew pearls before swine is an ancient saying before Christ, in the Upanishads and so forth. Is Vashishta told, Lord Brahma told Vashishta, I want you to go to earth next lifetime, and when you're down there, you'll meet three kinds of people. The first kind are qualified. You want to look for them and have them find you, because if they're qualified, they'll come to you, and you can wean them off of their desire for name and form, you see. And another kind will be unattentive, and you don't want to strew pearls before swine there. Then some will be antagonistic. You want to beware of those. So might sound like some sort of exclusivism, but it's not. It's practicality and spirituality. You have to give those teachings to people who are qualified. So at the end of the Gita, at the end of the Upanishads and so forth, you'll find, do not give these teachings out to unworthy people. Not even to an unworthy son or daughter. Don't give them out, because they will take them and ruin them. So it's a matter of being very careful with how you distribute the Dharma, so that it has the best chance of surviving here on earth, and it has the least chance of being corrupted. Because religion gets corrupted. Krishna says that in the Gita. Age to age, every religion gets corrupted. It's just a matter of a passage of time. It's like a ship getting encrusted with barnacles so it can't sail anymore. First it's perfect, the hull is smooth and sails out of the harbor, comes back many times. That's fresh religion, you see. That's Jesus just after he lived, or Ramakrishna just when he came, you see. But then eventually the barnacles start collecting on it just as a matter of course here in relativity, and then the ship won't move anymore. So if you're living in an age like that, then you have to get down there with a oxygen mask and a blowtorch and start chipping away at some of these barnacles and try and find a vessel that will sail you out into the ocean of your own consciousness again. Otherwise you're being impeded by so many overlays, so many false superimpositions. And that is what the Upanishad takes up right away, is one of the worst superimpositions over the soul is the impure mind. The impure mind is caused by desire. So I put these words in Sanskrit on the board here. Chit Shuddhi is pure mind. Chit Ashuddhi would be impure mind. Desires are called vasanas, and they turn into complexes called samskaras. So vasana samskaras. That means these complexes inside of your mind based in having had many desires that weren't resolved at the end of your last lifetime. And you bring them forward into the next lifetime. What do you expect, you see? But if you can fulfill those desires in some way, the best way is, of course, in the Dharma. There are other ways of doing it, which we'll look at. And then you have a chance of being born with a purer mind. See, so it's pretty simple teaching. Chit Shuddhi, Achit Shuddhi, but the seers value the Chit Shuddhi almost more than anything, because here in this realm, nobody sees their soul, nobody sees the Atman, nobody sees God, because God isn't here. That's what John meditated on all his life when Jesus told him, no man hath seen the Lord, you see, with these eyes. So you're not going to find God. You're going to find God-like beings, and you're going to have to recognize them with careful scrutiny. See, and they may look like just anyone else, or they may be madcaps, and they may look entirely different than what you might envision Jesus to look like if he comes back after 2,000 years. How do you know? See, so you need to be a jeweler to assess the value of a diamond. An eggplant seller doesn't know how much a diamond's worth, and neither does the weaver, see, or the fruit salesman. You have to be a jeweler to know the value of a diamond. So that's this qualification I'm talking about. You have to prepare yourself to be able to find the wise and take the teachings from them, commit to them, and then let the dead bury their dead. See, and you come with me and proclaim eternal life. See, that's what Jesus told the man. Oh, I love you, Jesus. I want to go with you. Oh, well, good. Then come with me. But my father just died. I have to see to his funeral arrangements. See, might as well been my daughter's getting married or any other thing. You see, but Jesus used that occasion to say, "Let the dead bury the dead. You're alive now. You've seen me. Now you come with me and proclaim eternal life." See, don't get involved back with the dead again and all the mundane human convention that's going on continually all the time without end. It's Maya. See? If you've seen the Lord, then that's the time to move. And right when the time's to move, when Maya is going to insinuate itself on you the worst. See? Family's going to rail against you. The world's going to resist you. Maybe your own karmas and your own desires will also resist you. They'll come flaring up at that moment, you see. So these samskaras, which are complexes, like knots in the mind, that make people do certain things. They make children act the way they do at school when you're not least expected. That make adults do crazy things, see, or very good things. The opposite is also true. There are positive samskaras in people's heads. That is, their minds. Not their brains, their minds. But not to excite the difference between brain and mind. Mind is consciousness. Brain is just a noodle in your skull. It's a physical thing with a little bit of connection to the mind. So if you find the mind, that you've found the kingdom of heaven within you, and then you'll notice how vast that is. And you can travel in it, see. And only, of course, if your mind is pure, you can even travel beyond it. So chitshuddhi, achitshuddhi, vasanas, and moksha. Traveling beyond it would be moksha, liberation. Then the main focus of the Amritabindu Upanishad is desires caused by what? Attachment to sense objects. It's sort of like the father of yoga. By the way, these Upanishads probably can go back some 5,000 years before Lord Buddha. We'll call that BBE, before Buddha era, instead of BCE. Because Buddha lived about 550 years prior to Jesus. So for us, we're looking at Buddha as being that great emanation coming from Far East. Middle East was Jesus, Far East was Buddha. So 550 years before Christ, that's BBE. Then you see 5,000 years before that, these Upanishads were maybe beginning to be written down, the historians say. They, of course, differ in their opinions. Some say older and some say younger. But the point is that they were very ancient, and as Vivekananda says, go back to your Upanishads now. This is the time to do it, because this is full of light. This is the ancient teaching that's not just ancient, but it's eternal. And there's a difference between that. It's not just time you're looking at now, it's timelessness. So beyond the mind and its reckoning of time and history is the liberation, moksha. But in the meantime, what's resisting and railing against liberation is attachment to the sense options, grahya. I use that term for sense object in the yogic sense because when Father of Yoga used it, he meant sense objects that are to be received, that are fit to be received. So he's making a distinction there. There are some sense objects that are not fit to be received. So it goes right with the first sloka, you see, pure mind, impure mind. There's two ways of looking at that. One is if you have a pure mind, then anything can be received. See, you don't even have to do spiritual practice if you're an illumined soul. You don't have to look at the scriptures if you're an illumined soul. So you're just living in the state of grace, if you want to call it that. So there is that to consider. But the impure mind, of course, to it, everything is unfit to be received because it taints everything it brings in. the thoughts that come into it, the sense experiences that come into it, the objects themselves have become tainted, right? I mean, the poor object, it's gotten such a bad rap, you see, in India, right? Oh, it's responsible for every ill. But, the realized souls will say, oh, I can take it or leave it, see? I'm just not calling it my object, that's all. That is, I know it came from me. It's a vibration that came from my mind. I know that, and most people don't. But I'm not putting any name tag on it, you see, any possession. I'm just leaving it free as it is, and then I'm not going to get bound to it. But there's another way of looking at pure and impure for the object. The object can become very degraded if it's become worldly. It's a teaching that gets a lot of bad press too in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, because people don't want to look at the world as being unreal, and they don't want to look at objects as being impure. All right, so other than the fact that the mind is rendering them pure and pure, for instance, like Jesus seeing the adulteress and saying sin no more when other people wanted to stone her, he didn't actually see impurity there. His mind was pure, so he saw her as pure. It's like you seeing the Atman in an evil person. See, it'd be very hard for you to say, Atman exists in some evil person that everyone hates, but it's there nonetheless. And if you have a pure mind, you're not going to see an evil person standing in front of you. And by the very property of your purity, you will transform the people you're looking at and the people who are looking at you. An evil person can get a transformation. There are records of that in Indian scripture, of asuras who became divine. Asuras mean demoniacal beings. They became divine by associating with pure souls. And Sri Ramakrishna used to love that the most. It's no big thing for a good person to get enlightenment. See, they should get it. But for an impure person to get enlightenment, that impresses me. See, so he loved those kinds of beings that had once been thieves or had once been, immoral and so forth, and they transcended that, and in front of the whole world, as if it was some show, came to a high position in life. So it's as if to say to every other so-called evil being out there, you can do it too. You see, I did it. It's not that hard. You see. So by example, they teach like that. So I'm using that word, sense object, grahya, in the sense of what is fit to be received. So if you have a public place where some object is just being used for vile things, you see, then it becomes impure. Even the impure don't really like to go near it, see, because they know other impure people have been near it. So it's like food that's already been eaten. Would you want to eat it? So it's a sense object. It still has taste, and you might even still enjoy it if you were of a pure mind. You could take people's food that had been eaten if you had a pure mind. Sri Ramakrishna saw a man once who was eating food left over from a dog's meal. And they went to talk to the man. The man told him, when you see no difference between the water in the Ganges River and the Ganges in this sewer, then you'll be enlightened. See? So there's a state of mind that is beyond defilement and non-defilement, beyond purity and impurity. We have to recognize that. But the Upanishad is coming at it mostly from the effect of getting pure, returning to a pure mind. If you have chit ashuddhi, if your mind has become defiled in some way, and this doesn't mean necessarily immoral. It means it can become influenced by something negative. Like your own brooding, for instance, is a kind of negativity. You pretty soon hate yourself because you can't get over the act of thinking in a certain way. You're impeded by your own mind. So it's not necessarily a defilement of an immoral kind that's in there. It's just probably a vasana or a samskara that you've been holding that's now come to the surface, and you have a chance to work it out. You need that drop of nectar on your tongue. Well, that's what the rishis of India want to make available to you. And what the gurus want to do is give you that eyedropper and let you know that there's an ocean of nectar out there, and a drop of it will make you immortal. You just need a drop of it if you're a human being. That's how powerful it is. A drop of lower knowledge is going to make you an intellectual. A drop of dualistic scripture is going to make you one of the priest class, you see. But you want this drop of non-dual nectar that shows you the identity of the apparently individualized soul with the Supreme Soul, the Jivatman with the Paramatman, the Jiva with Shiva. Sometimes we sing about that, maybe I'll sing about it later. It's the greatness of Shiva and how he transforms everything by destroying impediments. It is a very powerful being to have communion with. Most people prefer the creator or the preserver, Brahma or Vishnu. And when Shiva comes, they go, oh, I'm not ready for that yet, you see. But there's certain things in the creation that are already imperfect, that are already naturally impure. I'll show you a chart on that. And that's what Buddha said. There is suffering. So there are certain things in the creation that come out of Lord Brahma's mind that as they trickle down into the extant worlds, you see, down to the physical worlds, they develop into impurities that are a part of the fabric of life. And they're exacerbated by vasanas, desires. People actually begin to have an attachment towards negative things. They actually begin to like to suffer. I don't know if you've seen that or realized that yet, but Vivekananda made that comment to some naive Westerner lady that he was talking to. He said, oh, you don't understand. There's just as many people born here in the world to suffer as there is to enjoy. And it was kind of a new revelation to her, you see. And you look around, pretty soon you see it. There are people that are attached to their suffering. It's like their only anchor. Suffering should be a slap in the face that drives you towards beyond pleasure and suffering. It's a doorway into the infinite. Suffering's a better teacher than pleasure is. Pleasure's a worse bondage to get into. As we know by these opulent societies. They thought they could escape pain and just have only pleasure. It didn't work. It never has worked. No such thing as a good world. It's like saying hot ice. To realize that it's a mixed world. So that very world has come out of this mind. And that mind is mixed, pure and impure. See, there's Shuddhi, there's Ashuddhi, and there's Shuddha Shuddhi in the tantric teachings. Shuddha is pure. Pure means close to the source. Doesn't mean immorally pure, although you'd figure that in. So Shuddhi means close to the source. Anything that's close to God is pure, automatically. Early on in the creation, pure. A baby, more or less pure. A freshly drawn milk, pure, you see. An ocean that just got formed, pure, you see. That's closest to the initial source of creation. But that's Shuddhi, but then you've got Ashuddhi, far away, far flung. Now it's become corrupted and vile even. It's become used, like nature is getting used by vociferous mankind nowadays, greedy. So, but then there's another teaching there, Shuddha Shuddhi. There's the mixed. And the mixed is a very important teaching to look into. Basically, in the mixed, you'll find everything that stultifies you, again, that confuses you. Because most people can recognize the difference between good and bad. It's one of the requisites for starting into any religion or religious path. If you can do that, that's discrimination of the most basic kind. It should be common knowledge and common property of every child and every parent. But what they don't recognize is that when these two get together side by side, then you have this admixture called Shuddha Shuddhi, pure mixed and impure, you see. And this only makes sense to you if you know there's something called transcendent, beyond pure and impure. See, that's why we keep bringing that up in Vedanta. It's like the transcendent reality, Brahman, is never pure and it's never impure. It's never born, it never dies. It's never good, and it's never bad. You have to first of all put that first. That's your true nature, unchanging, unalloyed, uninterrupted bliss. It's all the un-words. It's in Sanskrit you'd go all the near words. It's kind of actually funny, near, near, near. You see, near to my Lord. Nirvana, nirvikalpa. See, near bijam, without seeds. So it's pure, you see. It's one, purer than pure. So then back to Shuddha Shuddhi, how things get mixed. That's where everything gets stultifying. Say, for instance, your acts. You do a good act and a bad result comes. Then you do a bad act and a good result comes. And this is Shuddha Shuddhi karma. You see, this is karma that's mixed. And people get stultified by that. The good person sees that and says, this is an unfair world. The bad person sees that happening and says, I can get away with anything. You see? Because these are consciously bad, consciously good people, you see. And they're both wrong. There's an iron chain and there's a gold chain, but they both bind you, Vivekananda said. So what you need to do if you're a good person and realize that bad things happen in the world is to renounce it. Nivritti, it's another one of those niv or near words. You realize that it's unfit to be taken. You see, so this is my long way about this word grahya. What's fit to be taken and what's unfit to be taken as an object, or even as an objective. Since object comes from the mind, it might as well be an objective object. You see. And I object to objective objects. If I'm a good person, that sees this happening in the world, I object to that. And so the first tendency of a good person who sees that happening in a world that's supposed to be good is to blame it on God. See? He was praising God yesterday in a song. Oh Lord, you're so beautiful. Then this horrible thing happens and all of a sudden he's blaming this thing on God. Holy Mother said, we should never put God responsible for anything good or bad that happens to us. That's the wisest of the wise I'm quoting. Sri Sharda Devi, Sri Ramakrishna's pure, ever pure, beyond pure Shakti. Divine Mother of the Universe she was called when she was living, and now 5 million people are calling her that. So she knew, you see, and they say, oh, well then it's the work of the devil. No, there's no devil either. This is your doing. You have to take responsibility for this. This is your world, not God's world. Didn't we just say, John said, you can't see God with these eyes? See, so then it must not be God's world. Must be something projected from this huge complex called mind. And mind has individual, collective, and cosmic levels. And pure, impure applies to all of them. You'll find the mind of Lord Brahma, who's the initial creator or projector of everything, of all the worlds, to be very, very pure, but not supremely pure. It's sattva, it's balanced mind, it's peaceful mind, but there are some seeds in it, naturally, because name, form, time, space, causation have begun when Lord Brahma projects the world, isn't it? A world cannot be projected without space to project it into, and it cannot be projected unless you take time to project it, whether it takes 320 million years or whether it takes 1 second to wake up out of deep sleep and there's the world, you see. So reason it out Vedantically. See, time, space, name, form, they all begin when this projection happens, so it must not be absolutely pure. Creation itself must not be pure. The projection process must not be initially pure. You're going to have to go beyond that first desire. It's called mula vidya, root ignorance in India. Because, most of the other philosophies I've studied in the world that don't come from India are talking about this world coming from a perfect place. That's naivety to India. India says it's all projected out of root desire. The whole shooting match is projected out of root desire. Mula avidya. Avidya means ignorance. So the world comes from ignorance. Nobody else says that in the realm of religion and philosophy. Nobody else. And Lord Buddha would have to come along later and drive that in for us, talking about the Four Noble Truths. So this would be that drop of nectar on your tongue if you were a person that was confused. This is the clarifying element. See, I can use an analogy. Sri Ramakrishna said there's this material called alum. The painters use it. If you're mixing your paintbrush, you're into paints and painting, and then you're sipping the paintbrush into a jar of water to get the old paint off so you can get the new color, right? Well, pretty soon this jar becomes like a brackish brown because it's got all these admixtures of paints in it. So evidently the painter, instead of taking time to walk over and get some new water, can just take this little bit of alum and drop it in that water and it immediately clears it. So Sri Ramakrishna used that, just like he used the first photography when they took the first pictures of him when photography was just an infant science, and they told him that nitric oxide, made the image stick upon the glass. He said, oh yeah, that makes sense, because if you don't have devotion, none of this wisdom will stick on the glass of your mind. Devotion is that nitrous oxide, or what is it? Is that what it's called? I think so. That solvent that they put into the early photography, you see. Huh?
Silver nitrate.
Silver nitrate, sorry. Nitrous oxide is thinking of something else. Silver nitrate was put on the glass, you see, and that in the old photography, caused the image to stick. And that put him in samadhi to think about that. He said that was the perfect example in the world to show that if people don't have that silver nitrate as devotion in their mind, anything they read from the scripture will not stick. So that you might call that pure mind. If you have a pure mind that's been qualified, then when you read this, you get inspired and you make changes in your life. Otherwise, you just fall back on old ways and have to make another charge at it at the next auspicious time. Hopefully there will be several in your lifetime. So to know the truth and to be set free then is to have this qualification of chit shuddhi in your mind. So shuddha shuddhi, this mixed version of everything, in terms of karma, that's where people get really confused. Seeing good things happen to bad people and bad things happening to good people. I mean, you could say, why do bad things happen to good people? But I think it's even more unsettling to see the bad people get all the good things. Why should that happen, you see? So, whatever the case may be, the whole thing is transcended in the Vedantic viewpoint. And it pointed out why you need to renounce a changing world like that. Renounce it could be, for a monk, could be different than it would be for a person still living in the world. They call it like householder, you see. Or a forest dweller, see, somebody who's on the fringes of life. It could look a little different, but basically the reason is the same. If in mature renunciation you renounce the world because it's constantly changing and it's full of impurities, and there's no way, not by reform, not by transformation, not by doing good, not by 1,000,000 acts, not by 100,000 breathing exercises or 5 million asanas, or by sadhana, the world is ever going to change one bit from the way it is right now. So when they see that, they let go of it. So you're going to have to see that with a penchant to see it. So you're going to have to say, take a good look at it with a clear mind, with this eye open, and say, I see now. When Lord Buddha saw that, probably under the bo tree when he was meditating, he said, oh, architect of the world, I see you now. Now that I see you, I'm not going to build any more houses there. I'm not going to build houses of wood. I'm not going to build houses of rock and stone. I'm not going to build houses of flesh and bone. See how beautifully put it? As if, we know that rocks and stones and wood came out of us, you see. But what about flesh and bone? They also came out of us. That's another house we took on, you see. So we build houses to build more houses. And then he said, I won't build houses of wise conception either. So that's how he ended that beautiful sloka in the Dhammapada. I will not build houses of wise conception. So he knows that wood and stone and rocks and those houses came from the flesh and bone houses, and the flesh and bone houses came from the mental house. And the mental house has to be shut down, so it will not build any more homes once he has seen that all homes are impermanent. And that kind of assurance in a realized being causes him to renounce the world. Monk, householder, vanaprastan, whatever he is, he renounces the world. And then he's free. And no more desires attend upon him. And his mind is always pure, or even beyond pure. See? All right, we've studied the Amritabindu Upanishad. Now we can, no. I'm giving away all the secrets early, but it's got much more validity if you hear it from the lips of the rishi, that is, from the minds of the rishis too. So let's put that together and take our first sloka before the break ends, before the break comes. Sloka 1 in the Amritabindu Upanishad is, the mind is chiefly spoken of as two kinds, pure and impure. The impure mind is that which is possessed of desire, and the pure is that which is devoid of desire. So, pretty simple teaching, basically. Chit-shuddhi, achit-shuddhi, and then you could say shuddhavasana, ashuddhavasanas. You could say pure and impure desires are there too. So, there is a teaching by Holy Mother, I didn't bring that chart with me, but she says there are some desires that lead towards bondage, and some desires that lead towards liberation. So, you say the desire to study the scriptures. I remember people have asked me this. They say, isn't that a desire too? Shouldn't I give that up? Oh, no. Use your discrimination. As long as your mind is in doubt, you should follow the scriptures and listen to the seers and holy company. There'll come a time when the mind will become its own guru, as Sri Ramakrishna said, but don't jump to that too early. Make sure that you've understood their message fully and have realized what they say. So, devoid of desire and design, as Krishna says in the Gita, is a very high mind. That is, it doesn't want to do anything anymore, because he knows that all actions come back mixed. Whatever act you do in the world is going to come back mixed. If you try and save the world, you'll get crucified. That's a mixed action, you see. So, you try to save souls, you take on some of their karma. So, they know that anything you do is going to have this mixed effects, and some of it's going to be adverse, and some of it's going to be converse, and some of it's going to be scriptural verse, and higher. So you're going to want to take recourse to these sayings, and this is why I put this up, so that we understand what they mean in India by desire, or sankalpa. It's desire to build worlds of name and form in time and space, and suffer and enjoy the effects. See, I'd have to put that in there. They would say, enjoy the effects. Let's create a world and have all fun. See, and pretend like death doesn't come. But Father of Yoga said, abhivineshas, clinging to life, is one of the worst problems that you have. You get into an old body that's not enjoying anymore, and you still cling to it. What's that about? See, is that attachment or what? See. So give it up. Go on to your next life. Go on to your next body. Buddha just told you that he saw the architect of the universe, and it produced many bodies of all kinds. So you can still do that if you like. They asked Swami Vivekananda once, should a man be reborn? He said, I hope he does not ever get reborn again, unless he can do so in full consciousness. So these seers are coming back in full consciousness, straight from emanation from the Divine Mother, as the Indian song says. They're not coming with karmas. They're not coming with loose baggage. They're not coming with desires to fulfill. See, Krishna makes that clear in the Gita. I have nothing left to gain in the three worlds. Therefore, I just come for loka sangraha, he says. Loka, world, sangraha, the highest good for. I come for the highest good of all the worlds. That means the people in the worlds, because the people in the worlds have created the worlds. Again, God didn't create them. Or you could say nature is fine on its own, if you leave it alone. don't mess with it, then it's perfectly okay. But you have to know that birth, growth, disease, old age, decay, and death take place in it. So nature isn't all that what it's chalked up to be, is it? In the sun, martinis, swimming, boating, golfing, whatever you do, according to your pleasurable desires, it's not all it's chalked up to be. Besides, golfing is really frustrating. You think you're going to go have a good time, it ruins your day. I've heard. So I have nothing to gain in the three worlds. It's a good segue from the rishis of the Upanishads out of Sri Krishna's Gita. Here's the three worlds, basically, and this is really covers the gamut of desire. I mean, if you really want to talk about desire at all levels, there's the cosmic. Basically, maybe we should start from the ground up. There's the world, desire for physical objects. There's the mind, desire for projection. And then there's the intellect, desire for attainments. What does he mean more specifically by this? When people have a desire for the world, they want sense objects, foods, pleasures, and possessions of the physical ilk. So they will come for those. They will make sure they're provided for them. That's what your ancestors do for you. They provide these things for you, which is why Lord Buddha wanted you to break the chain of your ancestors and get free, because the ancestors are constantly projecting these worlds. And the ancestor realm, which is here, at this chakra, is connected to the physical world, which are at the genitals and the base of the spine. Those three have connection. So there's three below, and there's three above, and one in the middle. If you can reach that one in the middle, then you're free. The three lower worlds are your ancestors and humans and animals and so forth, animalistic behavior. The three above are wisdom, vision, and transcendence. These are called chakras in the Kundalini Yoga system, or lotuses, if you want to put that in English. In the middle is the heart, you see. So three below, three above. So when you're attached to these lower centers, then you have this desire for the world, like your ancestors do. Sometimes I put that in another terminology. I say, just don't pray for anything. Give up prayer. You prayed once and you got everything. So this is it. This is your prayer right here. You got families, you got experiences with women and men, you got children, you got objects, you got money. Your prayer was answered. It was your prayer that got answered by you when you came into the body. And you means you and your ancestors in a chain, in a cycle. The cycle of birth and death called samsara by Buddha. This is what he saw when he went inside. He saw this with his third eye. He said, I have the Dharma eye within me. I saw this cycle of humans and ancestors going around forever. And then I came to earth and took a body called the Buddha, or Gautama Buddha, and I saw their suffering. And I realized that it was all connected, and that they would never get rid of their suffering as long as they believed in the world of cycles, see, of transformation, of going around in circles all the time. So I told them, Nirvana, there's a way to get out. There's Four Noble Truths. There is suffering, there's a cause for it, there's a way out of it, and then there's this eightfold path that will take you out and give you nirvana. It was a beautiful system, probably only rivaled by the father of yoga about 700 years later, when he came and gave us the eight-limbed yoga system for those who wanted to practice this eightfold path that Buddha had talked about. It's all India. Might as well be the same soul coming again and again, those great souls. They look a little different, maybe have a little bit different religious affiliation when they're out here, but they're the same consciousness. You have to know that. So, first level of sankalpa and vikalpa. Vikalpa is also a world projected by desire. Kalpa means like time, like a round of time. But is time caused by thought? Kalpanika means a world projected in time by thinking. So when they coin a word like that, or have a word to describe what ails you or or to describe the cosmic process, they'll build into the word these inner meanings, you see. Kalpanika means a world from your own mind that's cycling in time. So if you thought about it, you'd think, well, then time came from me. And if you thought deeper, you'd think, well, when my mind goes into deep sleep tonight, time stops, right? I don't know anything. And when I die, time might as well stop too, for all I know. And we know from the seers that when they go into Nirvikalpa Samadhi, time stops. The song in India says, practice meditation and cut time down. As if by sitting still and going inside of yourself, time will stop. See, because it's an illusion. But this illusion becomes fueled and begins to seem real by billions of souls who are participating in it. Just like this world out here seems real to you because billions of souls are participating in it. But there are certain people walking down the street, bowing, prostrating, taking another step, bowing, prostrating, taking another step, as if God is trying to tell you, this world is not real. Give up your attachment to it. Only Brahman is real. Only your true self is real. And get a drop of nectar and find that out. We just had one drop of nectar, which is a very simple, basic, straightforward sentence from a rishi, Indian rishi of old, telling us about impure and pure mind and desire that causes it. So the next level of desire is desire for mental projection. That is for worlds, for heavens, for excitements, and for distractions. That's the mind's business, you see. And we're blaming God for it. Oh, God provided the fields of the Lord and, the chitta vrittis, Father of Yoga says, this field of vibration that everyone can get into and have fun in, you see. But they also, when you're running a race, you also stub your toe on rocks and fall down and so forth. And they don't tell you that when you first get into it, you see. Just go have fun, and you'll find the other experiences are all mixed into that. And hopefully you'll learn your lesson from it. But you'll see that then vasanas, desires of the mind, which are mixed and impure, begin at a much deeper level than the level of action. Because out here it's the level of action, right? Everyone's acting. But the mind is acting too. That action is called thought. And those thoughts are vibrations, and they're the father to the deed. Right? Knowledge is father to the deed. So everything that's out here began its cause. It's the effect of a cause that's in your head, see, in your mind. But now take that to a collective level of billions of souls on different levels of existence. Not just this world, and the animals and the plants. They also have their place in the spectrum of action. But all of a sudden now you're having this great thought come in, that this was all a thought of a great mind that came out here. And that's why I say you don't need to pray, because it already supplied everything before you got into the body. What you probably should pray for, if anything, is how to use it rightly. See, because the prayer itself has already been answered. Now you have to go out here and figure it out. You see, oh, I'm in the realm of risk. In India, they say the first mantra, and it wants to get the teacher, because if you can get that early on, the mind will get purified and life will go on without a hitch. There'll be the least amount of risk, the least amount of problem, if you get that basic requisite over with. Now, my own experience in the West, and in America particularly, is that people don't run for the teacher. In fact, they run away from the teacher. They don't want a drop of nectar, they want sankalpa. And what can you do? See, that's why Lord Brahma told Lord Vasishtha, when you go down there, you're just going to have to find the interested ones, you see. And don't strew pearls, because they're not going to want you, and some of them will revile you. Put everything in the way of your path that they can, you see. So you're going to have to stick to that discriminative few, that want the truth and want to be set free. So that's called sincerity. Sri Ramakrishna would accept everyone who came to him except the insincere. He had that criterion. He loved everyone. He was there for everyone, even the fallen, the lowly, and the suffering. He was there for them. But if you were insincere, he'd say, why don't you go away? Go look at the temples, people who are the chaff and who are the wheat. And maybe even by being rejected by an avatar, you'll learn a lesson. You'll see these other people getting the teachings and you're not. What's wrong with me? See? The ego all of a sudden looks at itself. See? What's wrong with me? So by getting teaching, mantra, and guru early on in your life, your body gets pure. That's how my teacher put it to me. I thought my mind was getting pure, but I had to wait for that, work for it. What I was getting when I got the mantra was get a pure body. Because if you get a pure body, other holy people will want to be near you. Have you noticed? Cows drive horses away from the herd. See? So the worldly don't want us around, but we don't want the worldly around either. This isn't exclusivism or elitism, like some naive students are thinking. This is a matter of practicality and protection. It's also a matter of do unto others what you would want them to do unto you. So Holy Mother used to say, it's the true friend who warns in time. Other friends don't warn in time. They let you go on with your delusion. But the true friend will say, stop a minute here and look at this, what you're doing to yourself, and so forth, and will take you to task. So it's the same with the spiritual teacher. They're either inferior, they're mediocre, or they're advanced, adept. And if they're inferior, then you should reject them. That's not exclusivism or elitism, that's practicality. Let the dead bury their dead, but you come with me and proclaim eternal life. This is your moment to do this. You've understood the truth. You've rightly, as Buddha said, you have rightly determined. If you've rightly determined, then you're not a sinner anymore, by any means. Nobody can pin that appellation on you. You're the rightly resolved. You're the heroic. See, Virya it's called. You've become heroic. You've become exemplar for all of humanity without even thinking yourself to be an exemplar. And all you need to do is then carry on with your path. Well, all of this has to do with a whole bunch of people who aren't very good exemplars. It's called your ancestors. It's called your family. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, the world is a great pit, and your family are vipers inside. You know, like Christ, don't strew pearls among swine. I mean, these beings were not coddlers of the ego, of the human ego. They said it how it was. They'd seen people get free, and they'd see people bound. And they'd see how people got free, and how people became bound, and how they got bound in a worse way through desires and impurities. So naturally they're going to take these people and extract them from their families. You say, I've come to bring peace. I have not come to bring peace. I've come to bring a sword. And with the sword I will separate father from son, mother from daughter, mother-in-law from daughter-in-law. See? Who said that? Jesus said that. He didn't come to bring peace. He came to bring a sword. That sword of discrimination which will separate the wheat from the chaff, so that the wheat can be wheat. They can be free. I know you're thinking wheat-free, because you don't like gluten nowadays. But you're not, if the bound have to be left where they are, because if you take them out of rice and put them, take them out of the filth of the world that they're into and put them in rice, they'll die like a worm. They can't stand it yet to be in pure atmosphere. So there's nothing you can do for them, but just be an example. So again, this is all practical teachings, and as it gets onto the level of the collective, because we're calling the world individual, and then we're calling the mind the collective, and we're calling the great mind the cosmic mind. Now at the level of cosmic mind, the desire there is for power, for manipulation, for pride, and for glory. See? So basically, everything that's at that level of sankalpa is done for the sake of these things. And you can see that leaching itself down into the physical world. Like power and glory becomes going to nations and killing people and taking their resources and dominating over them. That's adharmic, no matter how you cut it. If you're defending your country, that might be a little different thing, you see. But if you're actually becoming an antagonist and protagonist, and you're beginning to do it for these kinds of reasons, then that's adharmic. That's against the Dharma. And that's only going to create karma for you in your country. You might get a really strange president in the future. Who knows? Stranger things have happened, see. So this is all exacerbated in a cyclic way, see. You don't see it coming up on you because it's cyclic. But what goes around comes around is a good modern way of saying, that this karma is always surfacing again, even though there are periods of apparent peace and no war, of apparent happiness and no sorrow, and so forth, in any given country or world. But we know we can look on the other side of the world when one world's being fed and the other side of the world's starving, that's constantly on our minds. So you have a sensitive person. You know that people who have compassion are aware of this, and so they're not falling into some sort of hypnotic haze about everything being a perfect world, or that it can be a perfect world. They're always aware of the risks and dangers, and so they're always on guard, and they're keeping vigil. Vigil in Vedantic way of saying is called sadhana. I'm doing my practice every day, because I know my practice keeps my nose above water, keeps my mind balanced, keeps my eye open, and maybe I'll be a candidate for a pure mind if I do that long enough. If I maintain that long enough, called sattva, then I can get to pure sattva, and that's the doorway into transcendence. An unspeakable bliss, an unspeakable balance and peace. The peace that passes all understanding, that I can have. You see. So I have to maintain for that. Holy Mother's favorite quality was perseverance. Once you get this drop of nectar, then persevere in understanding it. Keep rolling it around in your mind. Keep tasting that nectar that comes from it. Extract the essence and take it to yourself. So these three levels of Sankalpa brought to you by Lord Vashishta. He's a very ancient rishi in India. He was the mind-born son, one of the several mind-born sons of Lord Brahma, who was the cosmic mind itself. So the cosmic mind consists of Brahma, the projector, Vishnu, the sustainer, and Shiva, the destroyer. So right there in the cosmic mind you've got impurity, don't you? Because things are getting projected and destroyed. That doesn't sound like a perfect world to me. But the problem, well, let's put it the opposite way. The benefit of being Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva is that you can see that it's all a process. And you've graduated to the top of the heap. See, you are the Lord that sees projection, sustenance, and withdrawal going on, and all these beings are participating in it, and you're the overlord of them, and you want their highest good. That's why Krishna comes, who is manifestation of Vishnu, the god of sustenance, and he says, I'm here for the good of the worlds, for no other reason. That's a Vishnu statement, you see. I'm here to make sure that these people who are here reach the highest good. So I want to make their lives balanced and sustained in sattva and peace, and then they will have a chance to transcend the whole cosmic process. And all sankalpas and vikalpas will go away, because this is root ignorance. Everything kicks in when the mind starts thinking. If you study your own mind in waking, dreaming, and deep sleep states, you'll realize this, that everything kicks in, first breath out of deep sleep, first thought out of waking. See, that's when it all begins again. And the cycle is kicked in, and it's going to go 24 hours. And you're going to go back into deep sleep, and it's all going to end. It's like an in-breath, a held breath, and an out-breath, and that's why the yogis want you to breathe like that, consciously. Because basically, pretty soon, you're not just going to turn your lungs into a billows. It's not the point. Or feel high from lack of oxygen or too much oxygen. That's not the point. You're going to realize that the breath connects directly with waking, dreaming, and deep sleep, and that connects directly with Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, and that connects directly with the A, U, and M of the word, Om. And when these connections are made, then you're free. See? It's broken connections that have caused you to be forgetful and then come to bondage. And then you will engage in sankalpa mindlessly for lifetimes, they say. You'll just be going along your merry way with the ancestors, never even questioning why you should get out. The way Vivekananda said, the world's a huge gymnasium. Flex your muscles and get out. You don't stay in the gymnasium. It doesn't smell good in there. You just work on some strength. The world is good for that, you see. And get some knowledge from your activities, he said, and then get out. See? Get out doesn't mean just die. It means give it up. As soon as you give up the world, it ceases to exist as a world. Then it's only Brahman. You get that, understand that? You're thinking of the world from the standpoint of the individual ego, which thinks it's real. As soon as you give up the world, now you're in the Atman's domain, the soul, and the world doesn't exist for you anymore. And that's why they walk around in the world, these enlightened souls, just with their eyes rolled up and their skin horripulating and smiling and laughing and in bliss or in deep meditation, as if the world didn't exist, because really it doesn't for them. There is no such thing as a world separate from Brahman. There's only Brahman. So when you hear the teaching of Vedanta, the world is unreal and Brahman is real, that is, Brahman Satya, Brahman is real, Jagad Mithya, the world is false, then you should know that that means from the standpoint of absolute reality, from discrimination, from the discriminating soul who has given up sankalpa and vikalpa. But when you get to that point, the world is unreal, you'll know what to mean. You can put on that little adage at the end, if it's considered to be separate from Brahman. Because isn't it true that when you consider the world to be real, you forget God? God disappears, as he has, as she has, as it has, for the world today. People are giving it up, like rats leaving a sinking ship. And why shouldn't they? Because religion hasn't done its job. But Dharma is still at work. See, it's 24/7 Dharma. But it's going to behoove you and fall to you to uncover the Dharma, listen to it, as if you were receiving a drop on the tip of your tongue, a drop of nectar. So here, let's take our break, and we'll take a second sloka afterwards. you have returned with us at SRV San Francisco. We'll be also live streaming tomorrow, Sunday class, more on these Upanishadic teachings of the Dharma. And tonight we'll have our birthday celebration for Sri Ramakrishna Paramhamsa. Last night was Shivaratri that we worshipped, and we'll do so also in Portland the coming weekend. So if you want to tune in live streaming for those classes, it's a different Upanishad. You won't see the actual same class, so do tune in to take in the Adhyatma Upanishad, which we are studying in Portland. We're right in the middle of that Upanishad, and very beautiful teachings it has to offer. It's drops of nectar themselves, just like this Amritabindu is. So, to jump right back into the train of thought and stream of Dharma that we were bathing in before we took our break, we looked at this Sankalpa chart, which is something we, here in SRVdom, we look at least once a year to remind ourselves that everything is just a projection of the great mind, but that it's also happening on collective and individual levels. That is, people have their own individual personal lives and their own run of thoughts that their mind engages in every day, in rounds. Everything is cyclic, you know. One of the beautiful things about freedom, moksha, there on the board, is that people basically get out of those cycles, at least are able to break them of their own accord, rather than get stuck in these rounds of daily life all the time. We call that mundane human convention. It tends to make life a gray little study, as Vivekananda said, instead of living, breathing, eternal life. So there is a efficacy, higher practicality for taking in the teachings of the Dharma, because they will take you just like you would take a dog by the scruff of the neck and lift it out of a sewer if it was drowning there. I use that analogy because I did that once, walking in the woods, and came upon this facility that was treating sewage, and a beautiful white Samoyed dog had gotten too close and fell in, and it couldn't get out. So it was going to drown in shit, basically. So I had to pull my sleeve up and reach down in there and pull this dog out by the scruff of its neck. Took it home, washed it off, and it became very dedicated to me for some reason. And so I'm using that as an analogy that you yourself, if you've become of impure mind, you feel like the mind is not pure, then you can lift yourself out by various means, using the Dharma and holy company and guru and your own self-effort. Those would be 4 very good things to use. And put yourself in a new cycle. Actually, you'll find that this new cycle you put yourself in starts to transform the old cycles. And this is kind of the secret of divine life that they have, these great beings. That they're no longer, although they may be living and operating and looking like everyone else, they're no longer restricted to those, and are they suffering the effects of depression or disappointment or elation on both sides of the spectrum. They're just very even. Even-mindedness, equanimity of mind, peace of mind, whatever you want to call it, is akin to chit-shuddhi, pure mind. It's, maybe you might call it the requisite, if you persevere long enough with a balanced mind, as the father of yoga wants you to do, not react to anything, whether it be averse or positive, or even disease that might come upon you. Just don't react to it, and just say, I am the ever-free, ever-pure Atman. And you'll find out that pure mind is one with God, as Sri Ramakrishna said, or one with Buddha nature, as Lord Buddha said. Buddha mind is Buddha nature. So the mind ceases to be the mind, is what we're saying here. It's not the mind in the ordinary sense. That is, ego, thoughts, mundane thoughts, common intellect, and duality is the mind. That's called the antaha karana in Sanskrit. Antaha, inner, karana, cause. So they've named the mind very appropriately. It's the cause of all of this. from the cosmic to the collective down to the individual, as Lord Vasishta is reminding us here in this chart we just studied. Some of its facets are there. Hope, brooding upon things, seeking after things that are already yours, really. Owning things, coveting them, enjoying them, striving for them, accumulation of objects, clinging to them, not sharing them with others, taking the unreal to be real, conception, thinking, imagining, creating, projecting, and fantasizing. These are all the signs of sankalpa. So if you were to take Lord Vasishta's list on this riot act that he reads against the mind's tendency to do sankalpa, then you would probably be a very quiet, peaceful, unconcerned mind. And you'd find out there would be the source of your being in that undistracted mind. Because the Rishi here in the first sloka of the Amritabindu Upanishad is telling us about distractions. He also goes on to say in the second sloka, it is indeed the mind that is the cause of men's bondage and liberation. The mind that is attached to sense objects leads to bondage, while disassociated from sense objects it tends towards liberation. So it's a very simple rule. If you find yourself feeling bound, then disassociate yourself with sense objects would be a sort of rule of thumb. You find the father of Vedanta, the father of Yoga, Yoga Vasishta's system, and the Lord Buddha and others are all very famed, and Jesus Christ himself, very famed for letting go and not holding on to things, and being free-wandering souls. Maybe that's not practical in this world for most people in this time to be exactly like them externally, but internally you should be exactly like them, and give up your mental hold on all things and be free. This freedom really starts in the mind, and it also, bondage begins in the mind, as he's saying here. The mind indeed is the cause of humanity's bondage and liberation. So, Holy Mother used to give that teaching too. She said that this stage of the game, that is humanity, embodiment, she's calling it a stage. Once our founder Lex Sixon said, there are many other things to be than a human being. Told me that before he passed away. Many other things to be than a human being. So back to Holy Mother, she's calling us a stage. She said, at this stage of the game, the mind is crucial. It's very important that you treat it just right, because it can lead you to Brahman. And so evidently these are teachings in India that are timeless and ancient, and the Upanishad, she's echoing Upanishadic sentiments there, is that basically if you just follow that one rule of thumb, which is very simple, is attaching to objects tends to bind you, and giving them up tends towards freedom. He doesn't say gives you freedom, but it tends to lead towards liberation, is how they put it here, if you're following the text. So that's sloka 2 of the Amritabindu Upanishad, and I was going to just show you a little bit about desire. I mean, the pure and impure mind is the teaching really of the first sloka, but it runs through the entire first 5 slokas basically, and then 6th sloka starts to talk in terms of practice of concentration on Om. So they're going to shift to a position of non-vibration, the unstruck sound Om, by the 6th sloka here. So they're taking you through this in the meantime, as if to say Vedanta really starts at the mind. You didn't start this Upanishad or any Upanishad talking about asana or pranayama or any kind of lower exercise. They figure in Vedanta that you've already done that, because it's when you do those kinds of things and get them done and get over them. It's a message to the West right now: get over asana. Then you'll be led to these higher teachings, and this is where the Upanishads start. This is a finishing school for spiritual enlightenment. And so in order to prepare yourself for it, not only physical and pranic exercises have to be done, but the mind has to be connected to them. Manaha prana sambandha is a beautiful word in Sanskrit. How to connect the mind to the prana. It's like, people may be doing that or most often aren't, but to know that there's a word that encourages you to do so is half the battle. Oh, I should connect this energy to my mind. It's like, it's sort of like saying, let's make thoughts conscious for a change instead of random or reckless or brooding or any of these forms of thought, fantasizing and so forth. Why don't we make them conscious, connect them to the living prana? That's a beautiful teaching by Swami Vivekananda. Manaha prana sambandha. So you want to get free of bondage by connecting the prana to the mind. So it's what is being suggested here in these first slokas, and that will lead then towards pure mind, and it will lead away from impure mind. Sometimes we sing about that in various ways, but in this particular way, Tava nama sadashubha sadakahe patita dhamma manava pavakahe mahimata vagochara shuddha bane Gurudeva dayakara dina jane. Beautiful piece called Sri Guru Stavastaka by Devendranath Mazumdar, one of the devotees of Ramakrishna order. He says in there about this mind, he says, O Lord, thy holy name uplifts and brings enlightenment to all beings. Thy name even purifies the lowly and the fallen ones. But thy glories are revealed only to those with pure minds. O divine teacher, kindly show compassion to thy humble devotee. So, three kinds of mind right there in one verse, you see. If you say the holy name, which is one of these purifiers, which we'll get to next, I have a beautiful chart on that to show you about the pure mind and how to purify it. Then you'll be led towards this plateau of enlightenment. And even if you're fallen and lowly, that's patita pavana is the Sanskrit for that. So in English we try and translate that into fallen lowly ones. You see, the avatar comes for them to show them that God can come into human form and help them, which is an obvious fact to the devotees already. They just want to see that manifested. But the fallen lowly ones are fallen into bad circumstances, so your name even saves them. So we're talking about somebody who is getting the mantra and doing the practice and getting free. However, and the beautiful thing about Mazumdar's verse here is that, but your glories are only revealed to those with pure minds. So if you want to live on that edge of Mother Kali's sword, as we say in Shaktism, in Tantra, and you want to be there when she cuts away ignorance and get that first glimpse of truth, fresh truth, just like freshly drawn milk, with the soft bubbles in it and fragrance and all that. You want to see that milk of truth, or get that drop of Amrit that's coming off that sword, descending arc of that sword, then you'll see these glories revealed. And that's only given to those with pure minds. So this is like revelation or deep insight, realization, enlightenment. Those with pure minds have that. And I was saying that at satsang last night. This is a very rare and precious experience, and they're very rare and few and far between themselves when they come. And they turn into the teachers of mankind and give out these dharmic teachings and have beatific vision, have experiences of all kinds. In the meantime, there's impure mind. They aren't getting these visions and don't know what's going on. And then there are these Shuddha minds, mixed pure and impure minds that maybe have fallen on bad circumstances and need to get purifying teachings and practices. Yoga prescribes practices for that. So beautiful. Actually goes on to sing too in that vein. Abhimana pravaka Dhimardaka he Gati hina jani tumar rakshaka hai. Chita sanchita vanchita bhakti jane. Guru deva daya karadina jane. Which means, at your auspicious approach, ignorance and egotism vanish. The poor and humble rush to take refuge at thy protection. Even still, my devotion to thee is often unaccountably missing. O Teacher Divine, kindly grant compassion to thy humble devotee. So even those who have this mind that is in the process of getting purified, find that there are these periods of like dark night of the soul kind of thing, where my devotion suddenly went missing. See, it was on the rise and fresh and everything, and all of a sudden I was subjected to these tests and these trials and tribulations and so forth that come from them. So that's another beautiful verse that is sung there, that we like to point out. In the tradition, in the Ramakrishna order tradition, many, many songs have written in that vein and about Sri Ramakrishna and about other beautiful facets of the Dharma in a very short time since Sri Ramakrishna's advent in the early 1800s. And then we go on to Sloka 3. Since liberation is predicated of the mind devoid of desire for sense objects, therefore the mind should always be made free of such desire by the seeker after liberation. So they go on to take desire to task. And that's why I put up this chart, which is also kind of a classic we also look at once a year. And I've made this into two chakras, two wheels, that sort of tell you that you must get off of this wheel of suffering, this wheel of bondage. And to do so, you'll get onto a higher wheel, a cycle that I was just talking about that frees you from the old, and from the mundane, and from the tedium of old ways and habits. And then, even then, there will be another opening to get on a higher cycle. So since you're in cycles, you'll get out of these other cycles into a higher cycle, sort of like a hamster on a wheel that you've created for yourself. All of a sudden it sees a bigger wheel, and it runs over there and gets on that wheel, and then finally it's working its way up and out of impure mind to pure mind. So here we see Holy Mother's teaching starts off this chart. Not all can free themselves from desires. The creation is going on because all cannot be free of desires. Don't forget your teaching of Sankalpa. The creation is going on because all cannot be free of desires. Like your ancestors here still want worlds, they still want heavens, they still want excitements, and they still want distractions. So that's why this will continue on, the world of these lower three chakras we're talking about. And it's just matter of fact, but it's also a matter of fact that you can transcend that and get off that wheel to a higher wheel, which we'll get to in a minute. But she goes on, people with desires take their births again and again, but that indeed is the last birth in which one gets rid of all desires. So she's very matter of fact, frank, and straightforward about the presence of desire, the undesirability of desire, and the need to push on to have purer desires, like we were just saying, desire to do sadhana, the desire to study scriptures, the desire to get a mantra, the desire to find a teacher, the desire to meditate. These are all hinchi greens. If somebody in India know what that is, you should write us and tell us. But Sri Ramakrishna used to say that there are some greens that are good for you, and some greens cause indigestion. Hinchi greens are good for you. So he meant by that remark, using nature metaphorically, by way of analogy, he meant that some desires actually lead you towards liberation, and other desires will lead you further into bondage. So you have to discriminate between these two kinds of desires. That's also murky water, you see. Shuddha mind means that you become in doubt about certain things, because my teacher told me to give up all desires, but I've got this strong desire to help others, or I've got this strong desire to get a college degree, or I've got this strong desire to such and such. And so they get confused about that, but they're taking it in a sort of coverall, general sense, and they're not getting to the specifics and using their discrimination, which of course would be aided by approaching the Guru and asking what he meant by that. What are Hinchagreens, Master? What are these higher desires? Things that won't harm us, that we desire after. Desire to know the Lord, desire to increase my bhakti, desire to be more knowledgeable, desire to know what non-duality is. They're all, on both hands, there are desires that will impede you and desires that will help you. So you can't just lump sum everything into desire is bad, you see. And that's why these particular great beings, Sri Ramakrishna and his divine consort and wife, Sri Sharda Devi, are the best teachers for the day, this Kali Yuga. He's called the Kali Avatar because they're making that distinction between those desires that bind and those desires that free. And that's a teaching you don't find readily given in the past, in other systems, by other teachers, by other great souls. I think because in the past they used to leave it to you to know the difference. But things have become so convoluted now in the human mind, and distractions so thick and so varied, so many ways that you can get off track and forget yourself, that some teacher has to come back and say, no, actually, stick to this truth and you'll be all right. Holy Mother used to say that about Sri Ramakrishna, her divine husband. He said so many things and they were all true, but if you could just take one of them and meditate on it, that would be enough for you to get free. So that's probably good to hear coming from me, because I'm giving you lots of teachings, from Sankalpa to desire to music to what the Dharma has to offer, and that's good because that will help purify the mind. It will wash away everything else that is undesirable in your mind, and you may have too much of good things, but it's better to have too much of good things than a mixture of negative and positive in your head. So the ego is going to get overwhelmed by all this knowledge and say, where is that from? And if it's going to come from God, it all comes from the teachings of the Divine Mother of the Universe. Maybe I should head that direction, make myself deposit at her feet, you see, and give her my very soul and my mind. And then I'll understand deeper and deeper these teachings, and they'll free me. So desires, in the meantime, they get worked out, and let's go through that, because that was actually a good preliminary discussion of exactly what's happening to people as they move through these cycles to higher cycles. But that's some good teachings about birth and desires that she gives right there in a very straightforward, matter-of-fact way in simple Bengali that is easily translatable into our English. So you have to start at the bottom of this chart. Basically, there are these 9 ways of dealing with desire, which is the name of the chart. Some of them are inferior and don't work, and we're seeing that happen to a lot of people. They're using inferior modes and not working for them. Some are just fanning the flames. Others are liking that they're fanning the flames. That is, they like to suffer. Like Sri Ramakrishna's story, one of my favorites, is that the camel eats thorny bushes because it likes to taste, but its gums bleed as a result. So it's getting pain and pleasure at the same time, and can't really distinguish between the two, can't give up one for the other, or give up the pleasure to get rid of the pain. So it's a very good illustration of how people continue on in unwise desires, even though they know somewhere inside of them that this is giving them pain and it's bringing their problems. They can blame it on God all they want, or on devil, or on religion, or on politics, or on society, or on upbringing all they want, but basically it's their actions that are doing these things. Their actions might have been influenced by these that I just mentioned, but that was because of their own inability to discriminate between what's true and what's false, you see, and what's true, false, and what's mixed. See, that's, again, the problem, is that you get some half-truth from somebody, and you think that's it, and you try and go by that, but it lets you down in the end. Truth is all or nothing kind of path. You have to open this third eye and see it clearly, and that will put to death all doubts and all desires with it. When you'll know when that happens, and you'll know when someone's teaching you the Dharma that makes that happen too. And you'll adhere to that for at least a lifetime. See, one lifetime should be enough to get you free of all of what ails you. So anyway, I'm saying inferior modes, but there are some superior modes to get rid of desire too. We'll look at those at the end, but I wanted to take you through the cycle first. That's very telling. Basically, there in the middle is Maya. Maya operates via the movement of simultaneously alternating and counteractive cycles. That's a good statement. As we know, Maya is, by the definition given by Vivekananda in the first half today, name, form, time, space, and causality, right? So if you see name, my ego says, I have a name, and that's me. And if you see form, and you say, there's my body, that's me. And if you're in time, and you're using time and space to do actions that are just causing you repercussion to you, then you know Maya's in operation. So Maya operates. How does it operate? Is it just one way only? If it were just one way only, people might recognize it and get off that cycle. But it's going like this. I can't even do it with my hands very easily. See? It's like an ice cream cone. But it's going one way, and then the inner cycle is going the other way, so people get totally confused. And this will become clear when you look at what I've written here. Basically, I guess you could say birth and ignorance would be the beginning of everything. If you really looked back to your life, you say all the stupid things you've done, right? And you take them to account. You say, why did I do that? Or why was I born in that family? Or why didn't my parents teach me better? Or why? You have all these why questions. And you begin to assess them and put them together and look at the past history of your life. Call this a kind of meditation. Maybe your earliest meditation is a kind of reflection back on your life. So it's good if people would do that. They'd look back and see everything back to what they can remember. However, they might want to try and think back to the cradle. See, my teacher used to say, from the cradle to the grave, mankind is bound in ignorance. See, it's one of his statements. So in this meditation, it's not good enough just to look back to the first thing you can remember when you were a child. People are exercising that little fantasy all the time in a kind of light-hearted way. But it would be better to look back to the first thing you remember in the cradle, if you can remember that far, or the fact that you did lie in a cradle once as a baby, helpless, without knowing a thing, and that somehow from there you developed, body, brain, intelligence hopefully came to you for that lifetime. So looking back to the cradle, you'll find out that yes, it's true, I was born in ignorance. And if you heard the teachings of the Dharma and you acquired them and you meditated on those in a higher way later, and you all of a sudden reached a state of understanding of why Maya is in operation and how to get beyond it, then you could look back and say, that birth and ignorance changed. Now I'm living life in knowledge. I'm knowledgeable. Not just knowledgeable with worldly things or earthly pastimes, but with a kind of spiritual knowledge that's going to free me from these cycles. So whether you're looking forward or back, it's the best way to use time. Otherwise, the three phases of time bind you. You brood in them, you hope for things in them, you seek after things in them, you conceive, you think, you imagine, you create, you project, and you fantasize about things. And it's a hamster on a wheel doing this. It's going nowhere. And at the end of your life, cradle to the grave, you look back and you see that it went nowhere. And you don't feel fulfilled, and you still feel like you're going to your grave with desires. The old man still cranks his head to the left when a beautiful woman walks by. See, that's how Shankara puts it in the scriptures. So all the desires are still in you see. So all of this to sort of prove the veracity of this first point. Birth in ignorance is really the beginning of a new life in Maya. Next, growth in selfishness. And we know our desires make us selfish. And the person with desires is usually a selfish person, and a person without desires, basically speaking, is selfless. The person without desires doesn't have anything, so they want to give things to you. And this is the characteristic or higher marking of a realized soul, like a Buddha or a Jesus and so forth. So selflessness, selfishness are a duality to look at in terms of this wheel that people are on or they get off of in time. So birth in ignorance, going to growth in selfishness, then life lived in delusion. So it means you never know the truth of the matter. The truth is that you're one with God. Your delusion is that you're separate from God. The truth is that the world is unreal. Your delusion is that the world is real. So you're all backwards, and that's the other definition for Maya. Maya is she who takes something and makes it look opposite of what it is. That's right out of the Tantric scriptures. So take a look at the whole world and what they're going after. See, sensual pleasures, objects, and natural resources, basically. That's all sankalpa. It's all heaven, earth, and hell. It's all ancestor worship. It's all, at best, maybe gets up to worship of the lower gods, but it never gets to the higher gods, and it never gets to the seers, and the rishis, and the free souls. It never goes that deep, you see, to where you want to become an apostle of them, say, or a disciple, or a devotee, or a knower of Brahman. Where's your desire for that? What happened to that desire, your higher desire? So this life lived in delusion means you're on the way to the grave. Shankara puts it very nice if you want me to sing it, but basically I'll just say that when I was a baby, I was attached to my mother's breast. When I was a boy, I was attached to sport. When I was a young man, I was attached to a young woman. When I was an old man, I was attached to anxiety, because death was coming. See? Alas, to the Supreme Brahman, I was never attached. So he went through his whole life attached to things unreal, unsatisfying, unfulfilling, based on his desire. And he's headed toward the cradle. I'm away from the cradle toward the grave. From the cradle to the grave, my teacher used to say, man is bound in delusion. That wheel goes on to have death in doubt and fear. There are very few souls who can face their death with a smile, with a welcome. Dalai Lama's pictures there on the wall here in our ashram. Salutations. So he once told me, and I was standing right there to hear him say this, we Tibetans look forward to the day of our death. Sort of like that chief, one of those Indian chiefs who said, it's a good day to die. So it's just welcome, ready for that. I've had enough of this, I've seen enough of this, there's nothing here to attract me anymore. It's all been just a play. And maybe some of it wasn't a very fun play. So I'm going to let it go now and go back to the Great Spirit, or to my Buddha nature, see. So if you can do that, when you think about death and you have no fear, you don't entertain any doubt about your true nature, then you're headed off this wheel. And you usually, the soul who is making that kind of spiritual evolution, you might call it, forgive the term because spirit doesn't evolve, but is making a sort of use of the mind to go towards the Atman, gets on a moral wheel next. That's interesting. Now here's the wheel. You notice how it was going this way? Now it's going this way. See, so now I think I'm free. I got morality, and I got some religion, and I got into a church. But Vivekananda appeared to me in 1893 in my last lifetime and told me, you see, Good thing to be born in a church, but don't die in a church. So I must not have gotten free. It must have just been a stage, you see, that I got onto, and a wheel that could capture me. Because there's another teaching here called the 5 bondages, 5 cosmic bondages of bondage projection. I don't have that chart with me, but one of them is attachment to religious ritual. India calls that a bondage. And they call that a deeper, darker hell than those who don't do ritual. So that's interesting from a country that did ritual for hundreds of years in order to build up the Vedas. They did so many rituals, much more than we did. And they practices in the Vedas, there are practices that you couldn't even shake a stick at. There's so many of them. Practices in the white Yajurveda, practices in the black Yajurveda. All of this eventually was leading to the Upanishads, which was the distilled wisdom of India, of the non-dual kind. They reached the peak. They went beyond ritual. So I'm just saying that one of the cosmic bondages is attachment to ritual, so it would be a good teaching that goes hand in hand with this. I should have brought that chart, but we'll go on. So moral life is birth in heaven and on earth. At least in India we'd say that. There's really not a lot, except in Buddhism, of course, of clarity or even acceptance that there is another lifetime to live, that reincarnation is even true. This is a problem of the Kali Yugas, because we're not even able to admit that we've lived many lifetimes. That's even in doubt. See, we died in doubt and fear because we thought that we were done. That's it. There's no soul, basically, is what we're saying. See, all I am is a body. So you're a rank materialist through this whole cycle, and at the end, you don't even have enough wherewithal in your mind to say, well, I've got another life coming. That's, cutting yourself off. So I say there's an unfairness to science, that there's only evolution and no involution. The whole scientific theory about evolution on the physical level alone is called into question here by India, because there's no involution to accompany it. Everything has an opposite. If there's a void, there's also a fullness. And so if there's a projection, there's also a withdrawal. Last night we worshipped Shiva because it was Shiva Ratri. That's withdrawal. Shiva is there to say, I don't care if you believe in me or not, I'm going to withdraw all this. And you'll be glad I did. Once you see all this mess dissolved. Only I can do that, see. I'll dissolve it right in front of your eyes, like I do in deep sleep. So it's gone, utterly gone. There's nothing left. And that nothingness is to be meditated upon. When you see nothing left, then you find yourself. The ego is a big inflation. It's a big machination from the hand of Maya, that you're an individual soul was a lie from the very beginning. And name and form and time and space and your parents bought you into that lie. Your ancestors, see. Desire for mental projection, for heavens, for earth, for worlds, by billions of souls, ushered you into that and made you think it was true. Come on, suffer with us. See. Misery likes company. But the seers say bliss also likes company, you see. We want to bring you up and out of that so you can enjoy this unalloyed bliss, which is your true nature that you haven't been told about by parents and politics and business and conventional religion and yada, on and on. Nobody told you about it, but a few strange madcaps called seers and rishis and saints. They were onto it, you see. And they put it in a scripture and called it a drop of nectar. That's what we're studying today, Amritabindu Upanishad, 3rd sloka we're on right now. In case you want a text for it, here it is if you want to follow along. Amritabindu Upanishad. We're just beginning that in San Francisco today. So we're on the 3rd sloka. That's a lot of slokas to do in one day for me. I usually take a whole class just to do one. So back to our wheel here. If you get into the birth in heaven on earth, and I was just positing some facts about the fact that there is a reincarnation, you can't deny it, then next thing is conventional religion you come to. See, you'll be born in a family of pious people, Krishna says, and you'll get some teachings about religion, God exists, so forth and so on. That's good. But conventional religion there, that's the rub, because conventional religion tends to, over time particularly, become crystallized down to one way of seeing. It begins to deny the other religions of the world, so universality goes out the door, you see. And pretty soon it's becoming kind of fundamentalist and narrow, and that's never good. That's not religion. That's irreligion. I'm quoting Swami Vivekananda. When it becomes narrow like that, then it's good to be born in a church, but don't die in one. He's calling that irreligion. It's time to abandon that ship. And the soul is doing that. It observes ethics, and it has a mundane, habitual life around its church going. Maybe once a week, or prayer once in a while. I'm not talking just about Christianity, I'm talking about Hinduism too. You go and do your Shraddha ceremony and you worship your ancestors and so forth. Or Japan, Shintoism, you worship your ancestors. So you're pretty much at that level of ritualism, and you're beginning to build a samskara or a vasana around that. Habitual, mundane activities done over and over again. It's like a camel eating thorny bushes. It creates the mind in one way. It forms it in one way. And the beautiful teaching by Vivekananda, he says, the human mind has this one peculiarity that's most devastating, is that when it learns something new, it will stick to that and it won't give it up. And the facile mind is always learning more and more. See, it's not just sticking to one thing, holding on to it as if that were the ultimate truth and that's it. It's moving on and on to more higher echelons of truth, and till the non-dual gets revealed to it. See? And the eye opens, and the eye is made single, and then it sees the absolute truth. So it's never just clinging to one way of doing things and sticking there for lifetimes, because it'll get on a hamster wheel like this. So attachment to pleasure leads back to birth in heaven. That's a real problem with dualistic religion, is that they're positing that heaven is real. But Vedanta starts out by saying, well, hold on here, the earth isn't even real. Then why are you making some heaven real when the earth itself isn't real? It's all based on sankalpa. We already said that. Here's the world, here's heaven, and here's deeper heaven, you might say. See, these all sankalpa. It's all based on the thought power of either the humans, the ancestors, or the gods. If you want to give this system credence and give it its fair shake, then this is all, it's calling itself to task here. It says, yes, this is a big play here, but and it's a big bath, but once you get clean, you're going to want to get out. That's what they're saying, you see. You don't want to become a ritualist and just say, well, these worlds are all there is. Then you're just a cosmologist, you see. You're going to have to go get a makeup somewhere. A makeover, if you're a cosmologist. Cosmology is a good start. It's like in India they say, Vivekananda would say, it's good to be born in a church, but don't die in a church. And India would probably say it's good to be born in Samkhya, but you don't want to die in Samkhya. You want to go on to Vedanta and yoga, and you want to practice what the Samkhya tells you, and then realize the truth of Advaita Vedanta, and get out of the whole bath. See, you're clean. You don't need to be in it anymore. You just get wrinkled skin. You see, if you stay in a bath too long, you get wrinkled skin, right? What's that mean? You die and you get wrinkled skin too, and you get old, right? So you're just being reborn and born again with wrinkled skin as your reward at the end. And no skin cream or secret, Victoria's Secret's going to help you see, with that just happens. You're a walnut or a raisin in the end. So you're going towards birth in heaven, then this is a wheel that you're going to find it hard to get off of. And this is why so many people are born religious and going nowhere. They don't realize that there's enlightenment in store, that Jesus wanted you to go beyond the Son to the Father. See, if you reach the Son, that would be rare. That is a vision of Jesus, because people are worshiping and praying and so forth, but he's not answering and he's not appearing to them. And so they're making up stuff like spirit in the sky when it's not up there, see. Pie in the sky and so forth. Because they're not having vision of Jesus. If they had a vision of Jesus through deep meditation, like the rishis of India had, then Jesus would tell them, go to the Father. You're formless. Why are you caught in these wheels? I never invented those wheels. Maya invented them. See? No man hath seen God with these eyes. I told that to you through my apostle. You should have known that meant God is formless, but you didn't. And you turned me into a savior instead of an exemplar. You're supposed to follow what I did, and give credence to my words and realize the import of them. And so this wheel can be almost as bad as this wheel of immorality, avidya. You see, that's why the Upanishads say they fall into a deep, dark hell who follow this, but they fall into a deeper, darker hell who follow this. It's like you should know better, they're saying, by the time you get morality. You should know better. But you're not taking advantage of this higher wisdom that God has graced you with, that hasn't necessarily come to these people yet who are circling on this lower wheel. Well, the whole thing gets completely transformed when you find this little opening in this wheel, and it takes you here to the worlds of rebirth, out of the worlds of rebirth to the worlds of no rebirth. Now, in the Indian system, you've got Bhur, Bhuva, Swaha. That's how the Gayatri mantra begins. So it's that important to India that you know that there are worlds, Bhur, Bhuva, Swaha here going on. That is earth, nether regions, and heaven. Or if you want to call it earth, lower heaven, and higher heaven. That's what I'm talking about, these three chakras, right? At the root, at the genitals, and at the gut. This is where reincarnation is going on, obviously. It's where people eat, drink, be merry, have sex, have families, have lust, have anger, have problems. And it's all cyclic and going through their whole life, so why shouldn't it be that way in their next life? They're going to somehow escape their karma miraculously? Some people actually think that. As if they believe in karma whatsoever. So, these three worlds then are to be transcended. Here they are, the Bhuvarloka and the Svarloka. You want to get on past them. And Lord Vashishta, it's funny that this chart is being right next to Lord Vashishta's chart that we looked at in the first half, is he actually has a teaching about that in order to pierce this grunti, this line here, to get into higher teachings, you need to have love. He puts it very simply. If you have love for God, you can get out of this wheel. So he's actually saying that these people who are in conventional religion don't really love God at all. They may think they do, but if they loved God, they'd be abandoning the worlds and going for God. That's just the plain and simple truth of it. They'd love God first and foremost with their whole heart, with their whole soul, just like Jesus told them to, and they wouldn't have any concern with the rest of this whatsoever. It could go to hell in a handbasket for all they cared. Or it could trail along behind them like a little puppy, see. But they're not entertaining it, engaging it. All these things, brooding, coveting, they're not caught in those things. Those went away when these two wheels were transcended. So it's a very beautiful teaching. Those who have love for God will pierce through the worlds of rebirth, these three lower centers, and come to the heart. They will be devotees, even if they're reborn again in another lifetime, they'll be reborn through this chakra. They'll come into this chakra and they'll leave through this chakra. Or they'll come into this chakra and they might leave through another. They'll actually exit through nadis, nerves, not body nerves. This is just a model, a template for this nervous system you have inside of yourself. The mind is a huge nervous system, and those nerves are roads leading to other worlds. They're called lokas, akashas, the kingdoms of heaven within, the chambers of my Father's mansion. You can go to any religion and any great seer and he'll tell you about these inner worlds because he's seen them and he has concourse with them. He, she, they move through them, you see. And they'll do that even when they're in the body in meditation. or at night when they dream. They know they're going through these inner worlds through passageways called nadis. There's no equivalent word for it in English. All we know is physical nerves that carry blood. We don't even know that the blood is being carried by subtler nerves that carry prana that carries the blood, you see. What do we see by? What do we hear by? What do we taste by? What do we enjoy the objects by? Prana. That prana is what Jesus said when he said, man does not live by bread alone. You live by this other force. And this other force is actually addictive. That's why you get addicted to this third world, you see, because you're addicted to the prana of intelligence. And you're staying there with manipulation, pride, glory, power. This exhilarates you. This is the world of the gods. This is why they stay gods. They don't evolve either. But the human being has this opportunity to transcend all those worlds in one lifetime. It can come straight from Atman and go straight back to the Atman, in the case of Lord Buddha and Jesus and others. Or, as a devotee, it can come straight to the heart and go leave from the heart. See, if it takes form, it'll take us a beautiful form. And if it leaves form, it'll leave it easily and discard it and go back to oneness with the Father. Immersion in Brahman, we call it. So, an important juncture here, and where does it lead to when you pierce with love for God into the next higher cycle, the subtler cycle? It leads to Dharma. These teachings I'm making broadcast right now and have been doing sitting in this room for 20 years and in other rooms like it around the United States. The Dharma is where it leads to, and that's where you want to graduate to. As far as today's world is concerned, it's what's missing. It's what's missing in your family. You weren't taught it. You're not teaching your children that. So you have to find your way to a being who can teach it to you, transmit it to you directly without any doubt. And it will get rid of your doubts and fear. You won't think about death anymore. You'll just think about eternal life. Let the dead bury their dead. You come with me and proclaim eternal life. Who said that? Jesus. Jesus! Let the dead bury their dead. You come with me, and proclaim eternal life. So this is dead. This is deceased for you. See? And in fact, not just for you, there are walking dead here who are living it as if it were real life. And you've seen it not to be the case. You're going against the grain. You're going to higher levels of consciousness, and hopefully you can take souls with you. That's what a teacher will want to do. Grab a few good souls, come with me. Let the dead bury their dead. Let's go. Let's do this. This is the real thing. So, if you got on a dharmic wheel then, it would start with yearning. First thing you would go to out of, if you were to transcend the desire to be born amongst sense objects, foods, pleasures, possessions, heavens, excitements, distractions, manipulation, power over others, pride and glory, the first thing you would go to after you gave all that up would be predicated by how much yearning you have to see God, face to face. Like Mahatma Gandhi said about our teacher, Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, when you see Sri Ramakrishna, you see God face to face. And he's just one of many who proclaimed Sri Ramakrishna to be that kind of level of soul, with a capital S. So basically, yearning was the teaching Sri Ramakrishna gave to his devotees. People would come to him at the temple with Mother Kali and ask him, what's the way? He said, try and yearn for God. The first teaching he would give the bhaktas, those who had devotion. Try and yearn for God. If you can just cry one tear for God, that will be good. And then he would go on to say, you've tried, if they didn't believe him, he'd say, you've cried thousands of tears, jugs of tears, for wife, family, and money, and here you are still unhappy. See, try and just cry one tear for God. One sincere tear for God. So sincerity and yearning come together there, and that launches you on a different cycle. Whether you're a jnani or a bhakta, or a meditator or an active person, that launches you. And that's when you'll get the vows and precepts given to you. You'll get serious about doing penance, you might say. See, is a word we know in English. Or we'd call it tapas, austerity, in India. So, I mean, penance carries kind of that, I've been bad, so I got to be good. But tapas just means, I'm limited, so I want to be unlimited. See, I'm going to burn away my limitations. They're not sins. I've just allowed them to accumulate. Let's get rid of them. Get rid of the whole shooting match. And be free. That's the whole purpose of life, is to be free. To realize that you're always free, actually, Vivekananda said. Not just to be free, but to realize that you're always free, and you've always been free. So where did this bondage come from? This Maya that operates in counteractive circles. It didn't come from anywhere but human ignorance. And it's not going anywhere but back into human ignorance. It's inscrutable. It's the best word in English to describe Maya. You just cannot discern it, what it is, or where it came from, or where it's going. It's like it has no beginning, middle, or an end. It just crops up like scum over a lake. Keeps you from seeing yourself in it. So vows and precepts would come important to you. Like if you take refuge in the Buddha, you get precepts right away, you see. And or sometimes you get them before you take refuge in the Buddha to practice, you see. So whatever your system you're looking at, these are important. And that goes on to dharmic life. Now you start to live this dharmic life, which is different than moral life and is certainly different than a life of ignorance and wrongdoing. And you'll know the dharmis, we call them the dharmis, by the fact that they are armed with these teachings, and they use them in every instance of life. They use them to better things. They also use them to do away with things that are barriers and obstacles to their path and to the path of those around them. Their family, for instance. If you're raising your family in the Dharma, then you make sure that these teachings are given so that when you're not around anymore, then they'll be fine. You see, that's one of the fears I hear most often from men who come to me and say, well, if I die, what's going to happen to my wife and family? This is really bothering me. And so you have to tell them, if you've given your family the Dharma, because if you've given them the Dharma, then they're fine. None of us are indispensable. Obviously, Jesus wasn't indispensable, because there were many lumen souls before him, and there have come many after him. So the Lord and Mother of the Universe always have more to give. There's no dearth. You see, it's just abundance. And the way she looks at it, it's all abundance, not void. All the way down to the 5 elements. Do they look like a void to you? They're always producing. Even when you pollute them, they go on producing. They just give a few aberrations, like fish with 7 eyes, or some strange thing comes out of them because of your finger in the matter, you see. So with Dharma, none of this would be imbalanced, you see. And that's what the Dharmic life is. Dharmi is living. He has a desire for freedom that comes for him. In other words, the Dharma isn't enough. Starts thinking, all right, I'm armed with the teachings, but Krishna has told me in the Gita that knowledge has to lead to truth. And it would become a great evil if I just stay knowledgeable and don't realize the truth. It would become almost as bad as a person staying in church all his life for many lifetimes and not going beyond it. It would be to stay in the Dharma and not transcend it. So what is this other wheel that's now going on? This other wheel is called sadhana. In our way of thinking, it's just spiritual practice. You're polishing the diamond. You're cutting the diamond and then polishing it. In fact, you might say the Dharma was cutting and the sadhana was polishing. Would be a good way of saying it. So you're a diamond cutter now. There's a beautiful Buddhist scripture called the Diamond Cutter Sutra, which the great Buddhist teachers teach all the time. You see, it comes from the Pragyaparamita, that means the Great Mother teaching. It's about this how to perfect the soul. The soul's already perfect, we know that. So what we mean is cutting yourself an image would be a good way that we'd understand it. See, so We know the soul is already perfect, and since we know that because of the Dharma, then we have a better chance of actually realizing it. That's the cutting. See? It's not a transformation that's happening, it's a realization of what's already there. What stands in the way of the realization that's already there is impure mind, vasanas, attachment to sense objects, attachment to worlds, sankalpa, and so forth, that we've been reading the Riot Act on over the last 3 hours. So Amritabindu Upanishad wants you to have that drop of nectar that will cause this revolution in you to turn you into a non-dualist as you are. That's your true nature. Formless, non-dual, non-separate, homogeneous consciousness. One with God all the time. It's never been any other way. It just seemed like it was. And these are the reasons why it seemed like it was, and these are the practices that get you away from those impediments. See? And they're called sadhana. So basically you would get off this wheel of desire for freedom and you get on to attaining the path and the guru. So there you see, you get actually on a path, the teacher comes and gives you the instructions. I want you to meditate twice a day, morning and night. You want to get up in the morning and study your dreams. At night, you want to destroy everything that happened to you. Basically is what they're saying. A lot of people don't realize this yet, but when they say meditate in the morning and evening, they want you to meditate right away so you'll know where you've been, where your consciousness went and dream. Because you'll find out soon those are the kingdoms of heaven you visited, but you're thinking of them to be dream, and dream to you, according to your culture, is just a figment of your imagination. But it's actually a place you went in your consciousness. Since they don't know what consciousness is, they can't tell you that that consciousness has many levels. It only has one level, the physical, which is stuck in this first level of sankalpa with 7-8 billion other people. So then they also say meditate at night, because that means everything that happened to you at day, you're going to dissolve it. Because if you don't, you'll take it into your dream state and it will take root there. And you'll wake up with it the next morning, and it'll be coming back at you in your life, you see. So you don't, my teacher's name was Asheshananda, that means no residue. So he made sure he had no residue throughout his whole life as a monk that would catch up with him and turn ugly like that. People's lives are turning ugly because they don't dissolve everything that happened to them in the day. It's just like saying the world's unreal. Everything that happened to me is unreal. And it caused me to forget my true nature. So if I forget my true nature, then all of this becomes real the next day, right? And I'm taking it to be real. Therefore it's enforcing my sankalpa that it's real and causing me doubts and fears later. The whole thing is so interconnected that it would take hours and the flapping of gums for days to try and explain the connections, you see. So enough to say that sadhana, the teacher will give you a spiritual practice. That comes next. Initial practices that you're supposed to do, like study the scriptures, meditate, serve God and all beings. Don't serve beings, serve God and all beings. Vivekananda made that distinction. And increase the bhakti that you came into this wheel with. You see, the bhakti, the love of the Lord, got you off lower wheels and made you qualified for the Dharma. It's like Mother saying, oh, you love me? How much do you love me? A little? Okay, well then here's a little Dharma for you. And then pretty soon she's going to say, here, stick out your tongue. You see? I've got a drop of it for you. A whole drop for you. You see, stick out your tongue like at the doctor. See, I was at the doctor's office yesterday. Got a really bad gift. Somebody didn't know how to take blood. But I was at the doctor's yesterday, and I was sitting there waiting for the doctor to come in. And there's this containers of cotton balls and various stuff, you see. And one of them said tongue depressors. And I thought, I never knew tongues got depressed. So they will get depressed if you don't stick them out and get this drop of nectar on them. You see. In other words, tongue is taste, right? And taste is objects. And those get old. If your prana isn't refreshed and your mind isn't high, then tastes become insipid. You might start eating meat or eating fast food, see, which is not, the human being wasn't meant to do that. So that's how far things have fallen in you. So you have to be very well guided by this teacher, and he wanted to give you this initial practices, and when he gives you these practices, then you're to do them faithfully. See, not just profess faith in Jesus or Buddha and don't follow through with what they told you to do. And with the remaining minutes, we can just finish up this desire chart. Worship and study comes then with these initial practices. There needs to be something that gels these practices into your being. Worship and study will do that. So meditation alone, as I've been saying lately, will not do. Go to a 30-day meditation retreat and just blow your poor mind out of the water. It's not good. You have to meditate just a little a day, as your teacher tells you, and then study and worship. And then that what you study and what you worship and the meditations will come together, the three yogas, see. And then those three yogas will become synthesized and will become rich, and fruition will happen. Then the fourth yoga, action, will kick in. You'll be able to act without acting. That's what Krishna says in the Gita. You must know how to act without acting. That is, act without accruing any karma. So these arts become more and more pronounced, more and more refined, and it all ends up with this meditation, proper, that is non-dual meditation, and that gives you direct perception. That's direct perception of the truth in a non-dual way. So you are practicing meditation here, you were actually fulfilling the seventh limb of yoga here. I have a class series coming up later this year, the importance of the seventh limb of yoga, which I want to talk about meditation as its own attainment, its own fruit, and what it really means to practice it and how to guide it properly, and how to utilize it in life. So if you utilize it perfectly, meditation will turn into direct perception. That's if thine eye be single kind of thinking, see, or beyond thinking, as the case may be. To begin the class tomorrow, because we're almost out of time, we'll just take a look at these 9 kinds of desires and how some are inferior and some are superior. Some work, some don't. And it's very eye-opening. So you can give up those hopeful, sankalpic desires that you've been entertaining flat out, like getting permission to do so when you hear the Dharma about it. And then take to these higher ones and practice them. Put more of your energy into them and less of your energy into those things that you might think are worthwhile, but really aren't. It's like putting gasoline on a fire to put it out, to try and do away with desires at this level. So I think that's about as much as I will give today, and we made it through 3 slokas of the Amritabindu Upanishad and 2 charts. As far as purification, I'll show you tomorrow this beautiful chart on a mantra. You see there, Chaitanya dancing. It's really consciousness dancing there, not the body. So that means the rest of you should also dance here in this group, you see, as consciousness. You don't have to go out in the streets and fling your body around. Just have your consciousness dance in higher reality. You see, this is the real meaning of Chaitanya's movements, and Sri Ramakrishna's movements too. He used to dance, go into ecstasy. He was in the real level. He was at direct perception all the time, and then his mind and body were following suit. He was a copious map of different highest levels of consciousness, just as naturally flowing through them as they should through all of us, when we get that drop of nectar successfully digested. So we'll go on with the Amritabindu Upanishad then tomorrow after our puja to Sri Ramakrishna tonight. So let's end here with a quick Sanskrit sloka. Om Bhadram Karnibihi Sriniyama Devaha Bhadram pasyema akshabirya jatraha stirairangaistushtuvam sastanuvir vyashema devahitam yadayahu swasti na indra vrida shravaha swasti na pusha vishwadevaha swasti nastarksho arishtanemihi swasti no brihaspatir dadatu Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May we see with these eyes what is good and spiritual. May we hear with these ears what is noble and uplifting. And may we, while worshipping the Lord and Mother of the Universe with healthy minds and bodies, live a life which is beneficial to ourselves and to all other beings. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om.